Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Amjad Petrich. Welcome to another P3D video. Today I'd like to talk about P3D version 5, and if you're a newcomer to flight simulation or even P3D or even version 5, I've got some essential information that you need to know in order to get the very best and usage from version 5. Also, if you're a user of version 5, please stay tuned because you may be using version 5 incorrectly, and I'll let you know how you can get the best from version 5 as well. And finally, a plea to the developers for P3D version 5. There are things taking place in version 5 that I feel need to be addressed, and that's the whole point of this video. So let's get started, shall we? So P3D version 5 came about last year, sort of quite abruptly, I think, and probably to the surprise of a lot of developers who knew about the project. I heard about the project about 9 months, 10 months before it was released. So I knew it was coming, but I didn't think it was coming so soon. And I think the Microsoft Flight Simulator had a factor in its release date, due to the fact that the Microsoft Flight Sim was expecting to release at a certain date and got pushed forward in its own release date, projecting version 5 to be released earlier than maybe it should have. And I think a lot of developers, when it got released, and these are my own opinions, I have talked with other developers, and I think they kind of feel somewhat left out of the development of P3D version 5, like they were involved in version 4. Now, there were developers involved in version 5 who were in, not collaboration, but who were in discussions with Lockheed Martin about version 5. But I do feel that a lot of developers were also kind of bent out of shape a little bit because their maybe relationship wasn't the same as it was in version 5 than it was in version 4. Anyway, newcomers, if you're brand new to flight simulation, or you're brand new to P3D or even version 5, there's things you need to know about version 5, otherwise you're going to find it very stressful. Even if you're a veteran of version 4, version 5 is a very different simulator. It's a very different beast. It doesn't perform or behave the same way as previous P3D versions. It is the best P3D version so far that has come out. The performance alone, because of the DirectX 12 platform, is tremendous. Finally, we can have our sliders kind of in the upper limits to the right more so than we could have before, although it isn't needed though. Even having sliders to the left or moderately in the middle will give you massive amounts of detail in the simulator. There is a massive word of caution with version 5 and a little bit of instability due to the fact it's not being used correctly by its users and developers, and sadly so far hasn't even been used correctly since its release date, and we're going to get into that in a minute. So if you're a newcomer into it, you know, P3D version 5, we're on like 5.1 going into 5.2 now, and it's been developed using the DirectX 12 platform. Our previous iterations of P3D have always used like the latest DirectX, you know, 9, 10, and 11. P3D version 4 uses DirectX 11. The Microsoft Flight Simulator still uses DirectX 11. Even games like Star Citizen that have yet to been released use DirectX 11. It is a stable platform. It has been around for 20 odd years. DirectX 12 is relatively new when you think about it. It's only been around 5 years. It's still evolving and being developed on and being optimized as a platform for software. So the software that utilizes it won't be exactly stable inherently until DirectX 12 is, and that's one thing to bear in mind. It doesn't mean that P3D version 5 is unstable. It just means more caution has to be taken, and a kind of that has to be in your head if things do go wrong, you know. but it isn't unstable. Like, I have never had a P3D version 5 full-on crash of the simulator since I bought it. I've had crashes to desktops, don't get me wrong, but never been the fault of the simulator. It's always been a third-party add-on, the Windows operating system, or my hardware. It's never been the P3D software. It is a very stable simulator, and if it's used correctly, you could get the best from it, and that's exactly what we're here to talk about, okay? So if you're a newcomer, DirectX 12, you have to manage your own VRAM now. In DirectX 11, it was managed for you. You never had to think about it. You know, you put the sliders up, your sim would stutter. You'd put them down again, and it wouldn't stutter, and that's it. And if you ever overran your simulator, it just wouldn't load. Well, DirectX 12 is a little differently, performs a lot better, and you're able to move your sliders even further, and it still performs. It will still stutter, of course, like any other simulator, but they're less frequent unless you've got something wrong with your PC or operating system. Then stutters happen more frequently. I've done loads of videos in the past on how to overcome stutters. And there's a video actually being released either yesterday or tomorrow about stutters in particular. So please check that out. It's an A to Z of how to fix the 10 most common stutter problems in version 5. But it really goes for any simulator, really. Another thing to bear in mind as well in version 5 is that there is probably about 95% of the add-ons that are available and that are sold as compatible that aren't actually compatible for version 5, and we're going to get into the reasons why, and that's the plea to the developers that seem to be abandoning P3D version 5 in favor of Microsoft, which the community is very sad about. But the community is a waning community anyway. For version 5, there are more version 4 users than there are version 5 currently. So version 5 is probably got a very small community anyway. But the community itself is finding out how to use the simulator better than probably the developers, themselves, because they're more concentrating on other things. But anyway. So newcomers, if you are, I've created a whole host of videos on how to correctly install, how to correctly use, and how to correctly benefit from version 5 P3D. I suggest, I'll put the playlist in the link down below. I suggest go check out that playlist and use it as a guide to your P3D version 5. I've had P3D members of Lockheed Martin contact me and thank me for the videos I've done, and although no official thank you or word has ever been spoken from Lockheed Martin, I know that they are tremendously grateful for the work and time and effort that I do put in to my sim, because I have had members say that to me. So and I'm greatly appreciative of those that have, and I look forward to the future of P3D version 5. I really do. But what is it? Like, what is version 5 and what isn't it? Well, it's definitely not version 4. I see so many users trying to use version 5 like it's version 4. It's like, just go to use version 4 then. Why are you on version 5 if you're trying to make it look like or trying to make it act like version 4? Because it doesn't. There is a whole host of changes in version 5 that are completely different from version 4. Like the way add-ons are integrated into the system. It's different than it is in version 4. The way your scenery library works is also slightly different, although it does behave the same, but it's there are changes to it. There are changes to the back-end structure. You'll notice that there's a lot less files when you go to first install it. That's because you haven't finished installing it first. When you install the software, when you run through the installer and then you click close or finish, you're only halfway through the actual installation. You still need to run your simulator to fully install the rest of the sim, and then restart your PC, and now you can start using the simulator. So many people install the sim, then go to install add-ons, and that's the biggest mistake you can make, because there are files that haven't yet been written that your add-ons might need to write to, but they don't exist. And that's going to cause problems when you then first run your simulator, and now finally your simulator flushes the folders with a load more new files, overwriting perhaps even files that the add-on needed there. So when you first install, you need to run your sim, then you finally installed it fully. So there's a lot of changes to the infrastructure. Obviously, TrueSky is the biggest change from version 5 to version 4. It's allowed a more photoreal dynamic sky, but you got to remember TrueSky is in its infancy with Lockheed Martin. Now, TrueSky is a add-on atmospheric weather box at the end of the day, designed for video games, designed to be looked at from the ground up, and not designed specifically for flight simulation. We are using a specifically designed weather box that is made in a way to be used in a certain way, and we're not using it that way in P3D version 5. And that's just because we're a flight simulator. We need to view our skies from every single angle, from the ground up to within the clouds to looking down on the clouds. And that's just not the way TrueSky is even created. It's a grid-based system, so it creates its shading clouds along a grid formation, which means if you look down on it, you will see this grid. There are things you can do to disguise the grid and hide it, but inherently you cannot fully remove it. And that's the one disadvantage of TrueSky within P3D. Not P3D, it's TrueSky. Not enhanced atmospherics, which is what TrueSky inherently is for P3D, but TrueSky itself as a core product. Now, it is always being updated, and there's some exciting updates from Simul that I hope Lockheed Martin take note, take advantage of, because it will be a game changer for the way it behaves and works in the simulator. Unfortunately, the weather engines will have to recode in order to fully take advantage of this system, and I'm talking about the 24-hour clock period. The way time in TrueSky is manipulated, is represented at this moment in time as of making this video. In P3D version 5, it's a flick of the switch. It's a on and off feature time that your weather will change or evolve over time. It will either not be static like it is now, or it will change based on a set time period that the platform has to set. Obviously, we use a 24-hour time period. We use an actual real-to-life time period, which isn't exactly true to life. I think it does have slightly variables in its change. It doesn't keep time, the simulator, 100% accurately. It's kind of almost a little bit sped up, you know. You can get add-on programs to help lock that into a more stable 24-hour clock, but at the end of the day, it is slightly, I think, faster than real life. But Simul have recently updated their TrueSky to take advantage of a 24-hour time clock, which means the weather can be advanced or evolve over a 24-hour period. Which means if Lockheed Martin take full advantage of this feature, it means we can finally have proper moving skies, proper evolving clouds inherently within TrueSky without having it to be forced in by a weather engine, which is what is being happened right now, which is why you get such rapid moving clouds, or suddenly your weather will just appear and disappear at will, and that's that switch clicking on and off. I know ActiveSky have tried to change this, and you've seen this mad rolling effect. Again, it's because there is an on and off switch for time, which has already been released by TrueSky, so hopefully in the future Lockheed Martin will take advantage of. But anyway, getting a little bit off track. What is version 5? What isn't it? Again, I've done like a load of videos that sort of go into a lot more detail on how to take the advantage of it, get the best from version 5, and I really implore you to go through those videos. The link is down below. But let's talk about how you do get the best from version 5. Okay, so Version 5 will crash if you don't use it correctly. You know, if you try and max out your sliders and you don't set up version 5 correctly to your hardware, and when I say your hardware, I'm talking about your CPU, your memory, your GPU, and your monitor. And if you don't correctly use those hardware assets with the software and set it up correctly, you're going to get crashes. You're going to get crashed desktops and you're going to be frustrated. If you install add-ons that are not compatible with version 5, you're going to get crashes. Again, 95% of the add-ons in version 5 are not natively 100% compatible with the latest version of version 5. And again, we'll get into that in a second. So you're going to be frustrated and think that this is a big pile of shit if you're getting loads of crashes. Well, actually, the problem is you. You're not using version 5 correctly. You know, version 5 doesn't crash, actually. Okay? It's what you do to it or you don't do to it, which is why it crashes. So how do you set up version 5 correctly? Okay? The short end of the stick is your monitor, your GPU, and your simulator must be singing the same tune in terms of its frame rate and refresh rate. You know, if your monitor is set to a certain hertz, that needs to be matched in your GPU and allowed for in your simulator. If you're trying to set a crazy amount of FPS, then your hardware is probably most likely going to struggle to maintain that. Your hardware is locked, okay, to the performance it can achieve in any game, and that's the same for flight simulation. You know, your whatever GPU, whatever graphics card you've got, whatever memory you've installed, whatever CPU you're using, and the hard disk as well. If you're using a hard drive or an SSD drive or an M2 drive, whatever your combination of hardware assets, your performance benchmark is locked. You can't exceed it. It's impossible. You can only live within it, okay? So if your simulator is trying to exceed this performance benchmark, then you're going to get crashes in version 5. You're going to get stutters. You're not going to get the very best. P3D version 5 needs to be set up to be aligned with your hardware. And that's really kind of true for any simulator, really. But it needs to be aligned with your hardware. And if you're trying to push it further, that it actually can, your hardware can physically go, you're going to get crashes again, you know. The one thing to remember, the most important thing I feel, is making sure that triangle of assets is in place. Your GPU, your monitor, and the simulator. The refresh versus the FPS rate is so crucial in having a stable simulator. If your frame rate in the sim is jumping around like a flea, then you're not going to be getting the best from your sim, and you're most likely going to have a lot of crashes, you know. You could actually increase the detail in your sim by locking your frame rate. And so many people will say, hey, you should never lock your frame rate. It just hampers the simulators. I actually know it makes the simulator stable. If your frame rate is jumping around like a madman, and you can easily tell by hitting Shift and Z twice, if your frame rate is completely jumping around in extreme amounts, you have not got a stable simulator. And you may be able to say, well, I can fly perfectly fine, not have a problem. But at the end of the day, your frame rate does have a problem, you know, because it's jumping around and it's always trying to match or meet some wild expectation you've set it and never really being able to do it. And so it keeps on trying to push for it, when in actual fact, you could ease up on your simulator and allow it to display even more detail in your sim by locking your frame rate. You know, your PC has two options. The hardware is trapped, the performance rather, sorry, is trapped within the hardware. So you can either try to get your PC to sweat twice as much or half as much. Okay, if you allow your PC to sweat half as much, then you can increase the graphical detail. If your PC is having to sweat twice as much, you're missing out on graphical detail. If you've locked your frame rate to 60 Hertz to match your monitor, you're actually missing out on loads of graphical detail. You could actually have more graphical detail by lowering your FPS rate down to 30, locking your frame rate on your GPU. You could increase your sim objects. Okay, yes, it increases your VRAM, which means you now have to be more careful for crashes, but you've got a richer, fuller world, and your camera is smooth. Like, you won't notice a difference between moving your camera, you know. So please align your graphics card, your simulator, and your monitor all singing the same tune without different values being inputted, you know. For me, for my setup, the best way to use it is in the GPU control panel, locking the frame rate to 33. And because I have a monitor that works with 30 hertz, I can just turn vertical sync to on. But if my monitor is locked to 60 hertz, then I would use adaptive half refresh rate. Then in the simulator, I can unlimit my frames, which a lot of people probably say you shouldn't do that, but I can unlimit my frames, which means my GPU will force the simulator to only achieve 33 frames. Now, I usually find that the simulator always underachieves this value, and then it hits 30, which is what my VSync is telling it to. It's a 30 hertz, so if it goes to 30 to 33, I don't really notice or perceive that difference, but if it goes below 25, I do. So overshoot to hit the target, and I get 30 frames. Now, my PC doesn't have to sweat to do that, which means, or nor does P3D either, which means now I can increase my trees, my buildings, my level of detail. Like, the terrain sliders are all maxed out on my PC. I never had to limit them. It's the sim objects you need to be careful of because they are VRAM intensive and they will really increase your VRAM. Of course, if you do have VRAM issues, I recommend using the dynamic streaming option in the tick box. That will limit or lower the resolution of your textures on the fly in order to preserve VRAM. And that's another thing. Your textures, you know, what you set your sim at, you know, your resolution is so important, because if you set it incorrectly, that's probably why you're getting crashed desktops. Anti-aliasing is very intensive on the CPU. If you have extreme amounts of AA, you're sweating your CPU for no reason, really. I use the bare minimum of AA, and yes, it probably could be slightly better, but at the end of the day, I don't want my CPU sweating beyond what it needs to do, because it's going to be sweating with P3D anyway. So I don't want to put any extra load on my CPU, because if that crashes, my whole system goes down. You know, there's no backup integrated CPU on your motherboard like there is with the graphics card. You know, CPU dies, your system dies. You know, time for a new CPU. So I try and protect my CPU a little bit rather than trying to overclock it and push it to make it stutter or crash. So by limiting the FPS to 30, I get more objects in the scenery. I get more detail in my simulator. My PC doesn't have to sweat as much, and everybody's laughing. Everybody's happy, you know. So in the top right hand corner of your display section, you'll have your display resolution settings. Now, I've got a 4K monitor. I find that I have more crashes if I actually activate the 4K resolution. I limit mine down to 1440, and I find that it doesn't actually crash even if I select 4K textures in the box below. Now, that's the base resolution of your monitor. That number should be what your monitor resolution is. I don't think that the sim, though, is optimized for using 4K just yet. None of the textures are 4K, even though they can be scaled up to 4K, and a lot of the add-ons already are 4K, but natively, the sim is not 4K. It's still its usual resolution. The textures are still 1024. They can be scaled to 4K, but they're not native 4K. And that is a feature I do hope gets implemented in the future with native 4K textures. So I set my display resolution to 1440p in that menu. In the texture resolution box, though, you've got Ultra or 4K, you've got 2K as a high, you've got 1024 as a medium, and I believe it's 512 as low. Now, whatever monitor you've got, whatever the resolution of your monitor, really you're looking to match the second number, which is, in my case, 2160, with the texture resolution number as closely as possible. The further away your texture resolution is away from your monitor, the more anti-aliasing you'll need to use. That's a simple fact. The closer you can match your monitor resolution, the second number, that is 2160 in my case, to that texture resolution setting, the less AA you're required to use. Inherent. So I use 2048 because that is the closest, you know. 4096 is actually quite far away, and also 1024 is also quite far away. So I use the high setting. That means I need to use very little anti-aliasing. I don't need to use 4K textures, you know, because I have a 4K screen doesn't mean the sim is optimized for doing that. Again, hopefully a feature that comes in the future. So I use 2048 texture resolution, which means I only need to use the lowest AA. And overall, everything looks fine. Everything looks pin sharp. Doesn't have a lot of jagged ant crawling edges, you know. For the most part, it's fine. Now, there are some anomalies. There are airports that actually do require more anti-aliasing than others, just because of the way they've been developed. In those cases, I do increase, because I know inherently which airports they are, and I do increase my AA at the expense of some frames. But that's just life, you know. My frame rate does stay at 30, and it does stay at 30 in all weathers. If we're in a thunderstorm trying to land, it's 30 still. It doesn't jump and stutter, and you know, the only time my sim stutters is when the weather engine is injecting into it, which is a inherent issue with the weather engine and not the simulator. My simulator runs absolutely fine on my PC. It's what I do to it which makes it crash, and that's what we're going to talk about now. This is more of a case for developers now. You know, the simulator itself is absolutely stable. It's absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with it. Same with TrueSky. Although everything is always being optimized. Everything is always, and that's just inherent to any version of P3D. They're always striving to make it perform better, and as DirectX 12 gets improvements, so does the simulator. But the simulator is very much hampered by the DirectX 12 application, and until that's stable, until that's improved upon, the simulator can only go so far. But developers, here we go. Please, oh please, oh please, really go back to your old FSX add-ons that you're reskinning with an installer that says P3D version 5 and actually recompile your assets. Please go back and recompile using the latest SDK kit of version 5. This is the reason why TrueSky is not integrating with some add-ons, and why Lockheed Martin has had to go back to recode the simulator to allow for these legacy items in the sim. Basically, what's been happening, and this is a dirty little secret that is the reason why developers have blocked me from Facebook groups, have shunned me in their forums, and basically have completely not attacked me, but harassed me, basically, with negativity and lines like, you don't know what you're talking about, you know, because basically I'm calling them out, you know. And these are the developers that have basically, in their mind, left P3D already, you know. There are a few developers that haven't, and there is one developer that seems to be trying to come back to P3D as much as it can, even though it's publicly moved on to version 5, to Microsoft from version 5. I'm not going to be naming names for anybody. I'm not here to witch hunt anybody. Like, you guys know who you are, you know the personal decisions you've made. And the sad fact is when, say, back in the days of FSX, and a developer has made an add-on for FSX. They've compiled it using the FSX latest SDK kit, the development kit, and then they've released it, and everyone's used it and gone, wow, we love it. When P3D came about, P3D version 1 was basically FSX mirror image. It had a couple of differences, different UI, but basically FSX. And the brilliantness of Lockheed Martin using the FSX ESP engine was meaning that developers could go, cool, it's got the same file structure, it's got the same files, you know. There's a lot of words of FSX in P3D version 1, you know, where we can just actually create a new installer and run it into P3D version 1, and it will work natively. And it will work brilliantly. It will work as if it is in FSX. And that's because P3D version 1 was basically FSX. That hasn't really changed. You know, yes, we've got on to version 2, 3, 4, and now we're on 5. But the sim, the way, the architecture of the sim is still basically FSX. And it's still a 32-bit application wrapped in a 64-bit shell. So developers have only really, with minor upgrades along the way, like to make it version 4 compatible, you know, have only had to tweak their add-ons a little bit to enhance it for the latest sim, and create a whole new installer, and then boom, send it off. And that is why when version 5 came out, there were so many airports that were ready to go from the get-go. That was a classic sign of lazy developing, because when 5.1 came out, it changed the way things were displayed, because TrueSky was now a thing. Now, if you deactivate TrueSky, if you turn it off, you're basically treating the simulator like version 4. You're using legacy cloud textures, you're using a legacy weather box, and a legacy atmospherics. And that was basically like P3D earlier versions, you know? So all the add-ons would be treated the same, and you wouldn't get any problems. But TrueSky has changed all that, and has actually shown how lazy developers have become by simply porting over their products instead of remaking them or recompiling them with the SDK kit. I mean, that's all it really takes, is go back to your original assets, recompile using the latest SDK kit, and use the appropriate options when doing that Lockheed Martin have set. And by doing that, you will have a product that is pure version 5 now, native to it. Yes, you might have to remake some textures because they're now sort of out of date, or even the airport could be out of date and you might need to remake it. But at the end of the day, those that are just simply porting their products over are causing our sims to crash. That's not on, guys. That's lazy developing. I've actually stopped using a developer's products now, like in terms of I'm not buying any more from that developer, because they basically have just turned their back on P3D and publicly stated so. Like, we're not developing for P3D anymore. Well, I'm not buying any of your products anymore, even if you do make them again in the future, because a community has built you up, has gone, you are the best developer in this arena, you know, and has bought all your products and has loved them. And the congratulations for that is, oh, a new sim's come out, I'm just going to go sort that out now. Bye, guys, I'm not coming back. Thanks for that. Thanks for all those years that we helped make you who you are, and you're going to turn around to us and say goodbye forever? That is pretty shit. I would never treat anybody like that. So I don't want to know you. Sorry. You might be the best developer in a certain region of the world, but to me, I ain't buying any more of your products. Anyway, sorry for the rant. It really upsets me because P3D version 5 is not getting used like it should. It's not even getting to see the best of it, because like, until they go back and remake all these add-ons, I really shouldn't be using them in my sim because they're not native to the sim. You know, P3D version 5 has changed a lot and the add-ons haven't. And this is half the reason why we're getting crashes to desktops in the sim. Now, Lockheed Martin can only do so much. They can only recode their stuff so much to allow for this. But at the end of the day, developers need to get off their lazy asses on the Microsoft money train and create a team specific for each platform rather than splitting one over many, you know? And then we will see the full potential of version 5. If you want to see the full potential of version 5, remove all your add-ons and you will see the potential of version 5. You will see a stable sim. You will see a sim that doesn't have buildings popping out natively. You know, there is nothing wrong with the SDK kit for 5.1. You know, it's the way developers are using or not using it. Like, I make scenery stuff, or I compile scenery stuff for my own sim. I've had to go back and recompile everything again in order for it to showcase properly in the sim. It's a ball ache, it takes time, but it's the right thing to do. Anyway, that's the developer's rant, I think. I think I've said everything I needed to say on there. But what is the future of version 5? Because this video is going on far too long. The future of version 5 is uncertain. A lot of developers have abandoned the platform. I would say PMDG is the only developer who is correctly doing the developing cycles. You know, they have held off releasing products until they are fully 100% compatible with version 5, and thank you, Robert, and your team for that. That is commendable, you know. They haven't just shoved in stuff and gone, let's hope it works, guys. You know, we haven't had a crash in testing, but you never know. That's not the way to treat a community, you know. So thank you, PMDG, for correctly developing your products natively for version 5. I wish other developers did the same. I really do. Of course, any airport that gets released now is most likely fully compatible with version 5 if it's a brand new airport. If it's a rehash of an old airport, chances are it's not. But any airport you've got in your sim right now that was released in the last 9 months or updated in the last 9 months is most likely not compatible with the latest SDK kit of prepared version 5. And this is the main reason why you're getting crashes to desktop, as well as perhaps you're overusing your settings in causing your VRAM to spike and causing it to be reset and crash your sim, or that your hardware is not aligned with your software correctly and that is causing crashes to desktop, or your Windows operating system is getting in the way, which Windows 10 is another discussion all by itself. I have done another video on that, you can check that out. But Windows 10 is a major interference with P3D version 5, and there's a whole host of things you need to micromanage now in order to get the very best out of your simulator. Again, I've done a giant playlist of all these telling you exactly how you can get the very best. You can watch any of my streams on Twitch, any of my videos on YouTube, and you will see a perfectly working, absolutely fine simulator. Thank you, Lockheed Martin, for creating version 5, and I look forward to all the features that you're going to be implementing in the future. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you do like and do enjoy my content, please subscribe. I have like 80% of people who watch my videos who aren't subscribed. I would love for that to say 20%. Please, please, oh please, thank you so much for your subscription. It really does help me and benefit me a lot, as well as smashing that like. Although, to be honest, you can smash the dislike, you can smash the like, it don't matter. If there is anything you feel that I did not discuss in this video, please put it down in the comments below. In our next Let's Discuss, I'll bring it up then. I think this Let's Discuss will become more of a weekly thing or a monthly thing. It's all good in my eyes, because at least you're bothering to do that, guys. Okay, guys, thank you so much, captains. Take care, and I'll see you in the skies.